And I think without further ado, we should start off with our first speaker of the street.
Just a quick introduction for McDonald. He is the founder of Everlasting Technology, a social enterprise in Zimbabwe that aims to create green communities through innovative renewable energy solutions. And he is also really passionate about creating sustainable communities. McDonald, if you could please come to the stage.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jyoti and Riva, for the warm welcome. Allow me also to further extend my gratitude to the organizers of this summit. It really inspires me to see young people creating opportunities and initiatives meant to empower other young people. The synergies which are going to be created in this process are just marvelous. So, allow me to share my journey. I was born in Zimbabwe, which is in the southern part of Africa. And I grew up in an urban community and spent most of my vacations in the rural areas. So, as I used to visit the rural areas during the holidays, I noticed a big difference between the two communities. And I concluded that life was rather difficult in the rural areas of Zimbabwe, just because most of the basic needs are met with difficulty. And the phenomenon remains the same looking at sub-Saharan Africa at large. So some of the challenges faced include access to renewable or sustainable energy, access to electricity. So the key distinction to be made with access to electricity between the rural and urban areas is that in the rural areas, it's often the shortage of electricity delivery infrastructure like grid connectivity, and this results in shortage of access or no electricity at all. And what really touched me the most was the rate of deforestation and the continuous use of firewood. So electrification has reached about 80% in urban areas, and rural electrification still lags behind at about 20%. So that's a very big gap, and that's the commonality in sub-Saharan Africa. So during my stay in the rural areas, sometimes we slept late because there was no lights or any other form of entertainment. And sometimes I encountered the challenges brought by looking for firewood in the bushes. So I just imagined how this system is moving from generation to generation, though to most of the people, it's now a norm. So, yet, as firewood burns across the continent, black carbon smoke, they do more than speed up global climate change, as we know, but they are also a source of serious health problems, and they are a cause of the ongoing environmental destruction. So, I'm just a young person. I had no money. I had no resources per se. So what was next? I had identified a problem in a community which was immediate to me. So growing up, I've always been following a mantra by Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs said that the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who actually do. So after realizing that problem, I always dreamed of making an impact in the renewable energy space in my country. So um, I started, I think that was around 2016. I just started brainstorming in my journal different ideas I had to solve the problem. Like the problem was people are using firewood, and why are people using firewood for cooking? Because other available sustainable infrastructure, such as solar panels, they are very expensive. So people are resorting to firewood. And also other sustainable systems such as biogas systems are also they are not very expensive, but they are very unreliable. For instance, when we look at biogas digesters, they require a large space to construct. They are very robust. So people would just resort to um, using the firewood. So as I was just brainstorming different ideas, I tried to exhibit different innovative traits, just to try to look at the problem from a broader perspective. So I didn't care that I didn't have the money or the resources to implement the idea, or the fact that the idea which I'm going to brainstorm, was it ever going to work? So, also as a young person growing up, I've been always out there trying to look for opportunities and just trying to look for connections, because basically that's how you learn more and grow as an individual. So one day I was just researching on the internet. I saw a poster about a science fair competition by the African Science Baskers. I didn't really know how a science fair ran, or like the entire concept behind a science fair. What's an abstract? What's a research method? I just applied. I shared my idea, the idea I had been working on. So basically, I had been working on a smart household system that could directly convert any organic waste into electricity. So that was the idea. So to mention a few, time flew. I got selected to participate in that competition, and I connected with people who mentored me on how I could further research my idea, and how I could further develop it into a prototype. So I later ended up participating in several different science fairs around the world. I won different awards, received some money, different recognitions from different science fairs. So in the process, I just continued working and innovating on my idea. But one day I sat down and reflected. I was like, was this the end goal? Was the end goal just making a science fair project, traveling around the world? Was this what I had always wanted? So I'd always dreamed of seeing my idea being implemented by people in my community, seeing people actually stopping to use firewood, reducing deforestation, and now using a more sustainable way to generate electricity. And I envisioned a cleaner way, a transition to more sustainable energy. So right now, I had a prototype. The next thing was to implement it, to put it out there in the community. So I had no business experience, but I knew that the best way I could do this was by launching a social enterprise. So I launched a social enterprise, Everlasting Technology, which had the goal to allow communities have a transition to renewable energy. So I started cold emailing different people on LinkedIn, going on the internet, looking for different people I thought would potentially help me. I would look for their emails and just cold email them. So by then, I emailed, I think, over 100 people. And trust me, the success rate was very low. I think it was like less than 10%. But I never lost hope. I kept on reaching out to people, telling them what I dreaming of, what I've been doing so far, my works, giving them references. And you know what? For less than 10% people who responded to me, some of them were very powerful people. I managed to connect with mentors. I managed to connect with investors. I managed to connect with partners, which led to the solidification of everlasting technology. And today, everlasting technology has been impacting a lot of families across Zimbabwe. We are installing smart biogas systems, and we have partnered with a company called Home Biogas, also in Israel, and we are still implementing the transition to clean, sustainable energy across Zimbabwe. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, McDonald. That was so inspiring. Just going from regional science fairs to so much more. I think your journey is like really inspirational for a lot of people here. And
And
on this note, if anyone has any questions, please post them in the Q&A tab.
And just before we go to the questions, I just wanted to add on my own personal note that I think your story really highlights the equality differences we have in the world, because we in the West we in the Western world, in Canada and the US, we're used to having running electricity in our homes, but then we go to other parts of the world and we realize how big of a problem this is and how much this is actually affecting other people's lives.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Jyoti. There's a lot of um, inequality in terms of access to basic things such as electricity or water in different parts of the world. Yeah.
So, how would you see your everlasting technologies product being implemented across the world in different countries? Would you have a similar strategy, or would you change your product based on the location?
So our mantra at Everlasting Technology is all about innovation. So we are trying to develop different ideas based on the needs in the community. So we focus on renewable energy innovations. So we go to a community, we look at what energy products are they using, how do they need, how best can we assist them to transit to more renewable energy sources. So that's what we are doing, and currently our focus area is Africa. um, we are trying to move in different African countries, look at the situation. But in general, most African countries in the sub-Saharan region, they have a similar problem. So since our focus is still in the African continent, it's basically going to be the same implementation, but just maybe changing different strategies in terms of how we roll out the product in different communities.
Thank you for your answer. And we've just gotten another question. What advice do you have for young people interested in innovation, but who can't seem to come up with an idea?
So the thing is, just brainstorm anything that is in your mind, no matter how crazy you think it is, or no matter how you think maybe this idea is not going to work. Just brainstorm anything that you are thinking of, and also just try to stay updated with the current technological trends. Read what the new first companies are working on, and the more you look on that, the more you can broaden your mind, the more you can broaden your perspective, and the more you can know what's going on in the field. And also, another thing in terms of innovation is to identify a problem. You don't just wake up and say, there's this guy called Unnecessary Inventions. He just makes different inventions. But the thing with innovation, you have to identify a problem. What problem needs to be solved. And once you identify the problem, you can now there's a different design thinking process. There are different research methods. You can now understand the problem through data collection. You can interview people, do surveys. After understanding the problem, that's when you can start brainstorming. Okay, how best can I solve this problem? So innovation, it's all about um, looking at the problem, looking at the existing solutions, and trying to find how best you can make those solutions better, or how best you can make entirely new solutions, which will be invention. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great response, and I agree. Brainstorming is really important in the whole process. And we have another question from Mahashri. What was the biggest hurdle you faced along the way?
So at some point, I had the ideas, I had the product, I had the prototype, but sometimes in terms of resources to implement my idea, especially when I was looking for investors for Everlasting Technology, I'm a young person, and sometimes people, they don't give, the world out there is just very invasive. It doesn't give opportunity to some extent to young people, because people don't believe you. They are like, okay, um, how can this 18-year-old think of transforming this problem which has been existing for the past decade? So getting that access to explain to people what you are doing, and getting that access to get the resources, to get the funds. So especially in terms of policymakers, they need to adjust the policy so that they make it easier for young people to get opportunities, the same as adults. How adults are getting the opportunities. So I think that's one of the most challenges I was facing.
And just one last question from Moses on what was your inspiration in making your dreams come to light?
So honestly, I'm always inspired by growth. Every time I just think of the projection, how something, I just envision how this thing is going to grow or how it's going to change. What I was like, for instance, how this solution is going to change the way the lives of people in my community. So every time I just look at the trajectory or the growth of the solution, I'm always inspired. So it just keeps me moving. I'm always looking for growth, and I always aim high. There's someone who taught me just try always to aim for the moon, because every time you fall, you will land on the stars. So I always to push myself just to try to excel and get the best.
So, once again, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your story. I found it really inspirational and it had a lot of information.
All right. Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for hosting this summit and for giving me the opportunity to share my story. Have a good day.